Hey, Jodi, welcome to the Keto Camp podcast.
Hello, it's great to be here.
So, me and Jodi connected in person earlier this year at KetoCon. We hung out there in Austin, Texas. We had lunch together at Picnic, right? Wasn't it Picnic, that restaurant outside? Yeah,
Ah, yes, when you had your limited diet.
that's true. I was doing carnivore and I couldn't find much to eat there. We were with my fiance, Cynthia Thurlow was there, and a few others, and we connected in person. And it was great. And then, of course, I've heard of vibrant blue oils for many, many years, but it was cool to kind of see the person behind it. And as I was getting ready for today's interview, and over the past few weeks, I really enjoyed studying you and your work and your story. And I'd love for you to kind of go back. And it's an interesting story that your mom used to collect antiques, and that kind of was linked to kind of the start and the development of your company. Could you share that?
Yeah, of course. So I my story is, necessity is the mother of invention, and I kind of hit a place in my life where I was adrenally exhausted and nothing was helping. And a friend brought over essential oils that were actually in blue bottles. So my mom, when we were kids, she loved antique stores, and my sister and I thought they were incredibly boring. So her strategy was to encourage us to collect something because then we would give her more time in the store. So my sister picked thimbles, and I picked those antique cobalt bottles. I just thought they were really pretty. And so that's what I collected as a kid. And I used to put them on the windowsill. I really liked the way the sunlight looked coming through them. And I brought them with me, like to college, to, my apartments after college. And so it was just something in my life that always kind of brought me joy. And when a friend kind of introduced me to oils as a remedy for my adrenal exhaustion, they were in blue bottles. And I remember thinking, like, oh, this could actually work. Like, I like the packaging, and then I wound up figuring out some different blends to use on myself. And, I started to feel better. My friends and family wanted to know what I did. They tried it. And when we kind of tested it enough that we realized we might have a business here, it just made sense to me. Like, the oils were so vibrant, the blue glass was so vibrant, to call it Vibrant Blue Oils.
I love that. I love, I believe there's no coincidences. It was just all kind of aligned for you. And the fact that you remembered your mom used to
Oh,
collect
yeah.
those blue bottles and it looked very similar. And that really, was exciting to you. But, you said something really interesting because you said your adrenals were kind of toast. They were burned out. And we know a lot of people have this HPA axis dysfunction. And I know part of the reason because of that, Jodi, was because your husband at that time was dealing with depression, and it led to you kind of taking care of him and then and doing all these things, and your body was on this overdrive, and then eventually he that situation was kind of completed, and then your body was just like boom tax. Could you share what happened there with that transition?
Yeah, and I find that a lot. It's really funny. Like, you keep it together. Like, think of school finals, right? You have to finish. You're just running on fumes, and then you finish your last exam, and suddenly you're sick. It's like the body waits until it's safe to collapse. This is one of the things that we can talk about with your nervous system, and when you're in fight or flight and survival, it's not safe to crash. It's you think of the animals in the wild. The lion is chasing the zebra escapes, and then what does it do? It collapses and shakes and recalibrates. So my husband was bipolar, and he went into depression that lasted about 7 years. And I just kept trying to do more and more and help more and more. And what I now know is that I think the more you overdo, the less the other person shows up. I didn't know that then. And so it kind of accumulated with him attempting suicide. And I found him, saved him. He was in the hospital, and I was lamenting to a friend, like, how am I going to do this? My kids are 5 and 7. I have a job. I have all these volunteer activities. How do I then stay on suicide watch? And she said, you
Wow.
don't. You move him into a residential treatment facility, which was a new vocabulary word, but a powerful one, because there are hospitals. This one happened to be in Houston, Menninger Center, that are kind of set up for, they're well versed in supporting people through, this growth cycle. And so the minute that I knew he was safe and supported, and it wasn't my job to keep him alive, it was almost like I tapped the mat, like I just ran out of gas. But my kids were 5 and 7. I was class mom. I had a job. I would wake up, get them ready for school, pack their lunch, take them to school, come home, crawl back into bed, and set the alarm for like 20 minutes before pickup. And
Mm.
that was kind of how I was functioning. And I knew, I knew this is not sustainable. My company was really understanding and supportive, but I knew there were deadlines. Like I needed to find a way to show up and be present, and none of the remedies I was ingesting were really helping. And that was really alarming to me, because I really did want to feel better. And it wasn't until my friend came, I had helped her with a big fundraiser, and she was into oils. So she came, she'd already gotten me the thank you gift of the oils prior to the situation with my husband. And she said something that I'll never forget. She said, you have been so chronically stressed for so long, which chronic cortisol leads to chronic inflammation. And inflammation in the gut compromises your ability to actually assimilate your nutrients. Like, you could be eating the most pristine diet and taking all the right foods, and they're not necessarily getting absorbed and assimilated and helping you. Oils offer a different path. It's like, the major freeways under construction, you can take the side roads or the other roads. Oils can get assimilated through the nose. They go directly into the brain. The capillaries in the nose are closer to the surface. That's a great way to get them into your system, or topically. We know that you can apply transdermal nicotine patches or hormonal creams. So this is it's a different way to get it into your system. And the minute she said that, I was almost like inspired, like, that makes sense to me. Like, I'm open to try it. Like I'll do anything. I really want to be able to show up. And that was enough of an inspiration. And I had been studying nutrition. I'm in Seattle. We have all these interesting naturopathic doctors who teach all of these interesting assessment techniques. So I had learned how to muscle test remedies to figure out what
Mm.
is the most efficient remedy. And I was working with kids who are like squirmy and wiggly. And, it was just a really easy way to kind of quickly pinpoint what's going to be the most effective way to help you. And so I muscle tested the box of oils, and something unusual happened. Instead of getting one clear winner, like this oil for this condition, I kept getting the same 5. No matter how many times I tested, I kept getting the same 5 oils. And that confused me for a moment, until it occurred to me, oh, wait a minute, they're liquid. Like, I could combine them like I'm, mixing a recipe. And so I went into my kitchen and pulled out a shot glass, because I was a novice, and just started testing, like 3 drops of this one, 5 of this. And I combined them. And then I knew, from other topical remedies, that the easiest way to access the adrenals was on the low back. That's where they're the closest to the surface. So
Hmm.
I put the concoction, the remedy, on my low back. And within a few minutes, I was like, I actually feel okay. Like, I'm a runner. Usually when I'm ruminating through something, I would just go run. But, when I was in this, the idea of climbing my flight of stairs felt like a lot. All of a sudden I was like, wait, I could go running. And I'm like, oh,
Wow.
I could clean the kitchen. I could go shopping. I could do all the laundry and put it away. All those things that really, when you're in overwhelm, like seriously, the idea of going up the stairs felt like a big job.
Yeah.
But I started unpacking them. And then that night, it's not uncommon when your adrenals and your hormones are dysregulated, you might feel really exhausted or overwhelmed during the day, but then you're wide awake at night. Like the time when you're supposed to be awake during the day, you're sleeping. And then the time when you're supposed to sleep at night, you're like wide awake and unable to fall asleep. So I made up another remedy for that, and that helped. And then all my friends were trying it and saying, like, this is really interesting. This works. You should do something with this. And my background was in marketing and writing. And so there was a Nutritional Therapy Association conference, and it was only $200 to be a vendor. And we thought maybe 300 people would show up. So we made up like 100 test kits. The event started on like a Friday afternoon. An hour into the event, we had sold out. And all the feedback we got.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, I had run focus groups, and I'm like, It's pretty clear. I think people had heard of oils, they were intrigued by oils, but it felt like they had to learn an entire different, knowledge base and go back and understand. Like they almost felt unqualified. And that's actually an interesting detail I forgot. Before we went to the event, one of my friends was like, "You should do something with this." And I thought, well, surely someone's doing this. Like, this seems pretty obvious. It has to be done. So I went online, and what I discovered was that they made oils seem really, really complicated. And you did feel like you needed to get some kind of advanced degree to even play with them. And if I had, no one was kind of combining them the way I was. And if I had known, if I'd started with the research, I never would have done it because I would have felt unqualified.
Oh, that is so interesting. I love how, you had your own problem and you solved your own problem. And then that opened up like a business and an opportunity to help other people. You're like the essential oil alchemist. You mix and
Yeah.
match. And we're going to talk about the specific blends that you have. I love what you shared about the nervous system, and I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper with that, Jodi, because cortisol is not bad unless it's activated all the time, right? So maybe if you could explain for those the 101 on the nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, and the role of cortisol, and why the most common reasons why somebody's in the sympathetic overdrive.
Yeah. My dad used to always say everything in moderation, including moderation. And your nervous system is designed to keep you in balance, right? It's to keep you safe. So if there's a danger, we don't have a lot of lions chasing us down the street, but say you're driving and someone's changing into your lane and they don't see you. What do? You honk, you react. You're like very alert and ready to fight back. If, you're running at night and it seems like someone might jump out of the bushes and harm you, you run faster. When there's a threat of danger, your sympathetic nervous system takes over and it allocates resources towards survival. So what that means is your heart rate accelerates so that you have more blood for more energy. Your breathing increases, more oxygen, more energy. Your blood is routed to arms and legs and away from like digestion and detoxification. And this is great for survival. And what's supposed to happen is danger presents, you survive, you go back into kind of healing, maintenance, parasympathetic mode. Sadly, what happens is that your nervous system responds not just to physical stressors, but to anticipatory stress, right? If your village burned down from a fire, when you smell fire, you want to be prepared. So what that means is if you're thinking about the past, some argument, some bad relationship, some trauma, or you're concerned about the future, worried about something that could happen, the economy, your health, your parents' health, whatever it is, because the body can't kind of discern between real stress and anticipatory stress, that puts you into this sympathetic state. So when you're anxious and worried all the time, your body is reacting as if there's an emergency. And the other thing that happens is it creates these kind of emergency energy hormones in the body, like cortisol, epinephrine, noradrenaline. And these things are really great. Like you're supposed to be able to have these stress hormones, this burst of energy, survive, and then recover. But if it keeps happening in the long term, it's like, even race cars need to make pit stops, right? If they keep racing around the track, what's going to happen? The wear and tear on the tires, all of these things, you're setting yourself up for some kind of, delayed maintenance problem. And so one of the things that I really try to help people do is shift out of that sympathetic overdrive stress state into the parasympathetic rest, digest, and relax. And the easiest way to do this, the gear shift, so to speak, is what's known as cranial nerve number 10, your vagus nerve, that plays a huge role in all health functions. And it starts at the base of the brain, splits, is most accessible behind the earlobe, winds through the throat, the heart, the lungs, every organ of digestion and detoxification. When you do yoga and you notice that in Shavasana, you feel so much better than at the beginning of the class, it's because your vagus nerve has been activated. When you do breathing exercises, when you do cold plunges, all of these things that you always feel better after, it's because you're turning on parasympathetic. And what I do with oils, what I found is there was some interesting research by this New York neuroscientist named Kevin Tracy. And what he found is they actually surgically implanted a pacemaker-like device right behind the earlobe, where the vagus nerve is the most accessible. It's two surgeries and then another battery kind of lower down. But they were using this to stimulate the vagus nerve, and they were having great success. The FDA has approved it for epilepsy, migraines, and depression. But instead of needing an invasive surgery, you can take a stimulatory blend of essential oils. I use clove, which is super stimulatory and has a lot of health properties, and lime, which has really small molecules, because blending oils is chemistry, right? Mm-hmm. So if you find something that has medium-sized molecules but super stimulatory with something that has very small molecules, you get the benefit of both. All of a sudden, it's stimulatory and it gets through the skin and works quickly.
That's so good. So if the parasympathetic nervous system is for rest and digest, and so many people are on the opposite spectrum, just think about when they sit down to eat a meal, or they're not sitting down to eat a meal. I hear your dogs in the background. They're excited.
No, I'm trying to find a way to mute myself. I'm so sorry.
No worries. I think okay, go ahead. I'll continue as your dogs are barking. I love dogs. But most people, when they sit down to eat a meal, even if they sit down to eat a meal, people are just walking and eating, driving and eating. But if they do sit down to eat a meal, they're on their phone, they're on their TikTok, they're watching the news, watching TV, and they're sympathetic. And it's harder to digest the food, harder to assimilate it. The nutrients are not going to be absorbed. So this is a great tip, because if you could find a way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, especially right before you eat a meal, you're going to have so much better digestion. So what is the blend called for the parasympathetic, and do you recommend using it right before a meal?
That's exactly what I recommend it for. It's called Parasympathetic, to make it simple. And it's even, for moms that are listening, I almost want to retroactively admonish myself. I'd spent all of this time making these nutrient dense whole food meals, and then I'd literally rush to eat them before driving the kids to soccer practice, right? And if you're not, it's not just what you eat, it's how you eat. You really need to eat in that rest and digest state. So what I've found now is that you can just put a little dab on your kids, behind the earlobe on that mastoid bone, and that helps them activate the parasympathetic nervous system, so that you're spending all this time, money, and energy on your diet, on your keto diet, really eating healthy, organic food. You might as well make sure that you're actually digesting, absorbing, and assimilating it.
What a great tip. Hey, and the kids won't mind, because they're not swallowing pills, they're not taking a shot. It's like a oil on their skin. They will not mind that.
No matter how many ways I made kale, they actually did like kale trips, but I spent a lot of time trying to get them to eat nutrient dense whole foods. They never once complained about mom putting oil on them.
That's awesome. What are some other creative uses for the parasympathetic blend? So if somebody has that wired and tired at night, they're doing, maybe they do a Dutch test or a 24-hour cortisol test, and they see at night is when your cortisol is high, but that's inverted. It wants to be higher in the morning. Would taking it at night be a good idea for them, the parasympathetic blend?
Yeah. And the other thing that's really interesting is for anyone who's not having regular bowel movements, what the way parasympathetic works with digestion, right, is it actually, your vagus nerve stimulates your mouth to release saliva, and you need that saliva to start to break down, especially the carbohydrates. It triggers the stomach to release hydrochloric acid. So if you're having GERD or acid reflux, it can be helpful. It stimulates the pancreas to release enzymes, the gallbladder to release bile. If you're noticing that when you eat kind of heavy, fatty food or greasy food, you don't feel great. If you ever feel like nauseous or motion sick, that's often gallbladder. The bile isn't releasing as well. It stimulates the small intestine to assimilate nutrients and the large intestine to eliminate, that whole digestive cascade, which is kind of the moving sidewalk through your digestive system. If you think that lion is chasing you, it doesn't really matter if you're digesting or eliminating your food. So sometimes constipation is really a motility wave thing.
That's so good. So many uses there. I'm curious, because one of the things that I track for my sympathetic to parasympathetic balance is my heart rate variability, my HRV on my Oura ring. Yeah. And for me, it's always an important marker, because I found my baseline and am gradually increasing that HRV, which is what you want to do. And I don't know if you've ever done this, but it would be interesting to do like a case study on maybe 10 or 20 people who have an Oura ring or something that tracks HRV, and they don't change anything but that one thing. They just add the parasympathetic blend to the mix and then see what happens to their heart rate variability. That would be interesting.
We've had so many people report back to us that shifts it immediately.
I would
We've even
imagine. Yeah.
people like Kelly Kennedy kind of puts people
Yeah.
on that whole there's that really expensive like parasympathetic marker test, and she said it immediately shifts people. And what's interesting is there's so many ways you can activate your vagus nerve. It's not rocket science. It doesn't need to be an oil. It can be singing, it can be humming, it can be deep breathing, it can be a cold plunge. It's just that for whatever reason, those things feel harder, like for what you can just flip a bottle and put it behind your ear, and people are like, well, that I can do. I can put in my pocket. Like I can remember it. It kind of smells good. That doesn't feel as hard to me as remembering to box breathe, which all of them are manageable if you decide to do it. So that's the reason I kind of picked that, is because if, it's kind of like if the ambulance can't get to the injured car, it's not going to save lives. If you don't actually do the things that are going to help activate your parasympathetic nervous system, you're not going to see the benefit.
The ketogenic diet is all the craze these days. Rightfully so. Using keto could be a powerful way to achieve extraordinary health results. And if you're interested in keto, but just so confused by all the information out there, you're gonna wanna watch this video. If we're just meeting, my name is Ben Azadi. I'm the best-selling author of 4 books, including my recent book, the best-selling Keto Flex book. And I'm excited to share with you about a new 7-day Keto Kickstart Challenge where I'm gonna reveal my 4-pillar framework to achieving long-term results with keto and fasting. This 7-day challenge is 100% completely free. Me and the Keto Camp team are gonna teach you the blueprint that we've used to apply to thousands of our clients for amazing results. There's a lot of information out there, and it's enough to leave you confused, conflicted, and paralyzed with your thought process. What we're gonna do is take all that clutter and cut through the noise and give you a simple step-by-step 4-pillar framework so you could achieve extraordinary results with your health. I really want this to be your healthiest and best year ever, and this challenge is going to help you accomplish that. So what I want you to do is click the link around this video here, learn more about this 7-day Keto Kickstart Challenge, get signed up, and we'll see you in the 7-day Keto Kickstart Challenge.
Yeah, it's so easy. I mean, I have 3 of your bottles here on my desk, and I just put it on so easily. I have the gallbladder, the histamine balance, and the circadian rhythm. And we'll talk about those later, but it's so easy. You keep it near you, put it in the area that it tells you. The instructions are very clear. For example, circadian rhythm says above ears, on top of skull, and very back of the head. So it has, clear instructions.
Right there. Yeah.
There.
And not on the forehead, because if you're a tossy-turny sleeper, you don't want to get that in your eyes.
Good call. Good call. And I want to talk about sleep now, but for those who are listening or watching on YouTube, we do have a link for you to get Vibrant Blue Oils. We'll drop it down below. And Jodi was kind enough to give you all a 10% off coupon code, which is Keto Camp. So you could check that out down below. But let's talk about sleep. It's one of the foundations of health. If you don't have your sleep foundation strong, it doesn't matter what you add into the mix. It's just not going to get the results you want. So what are the most common things, the most common issues you've seen with sleep, Jodi? And what are some of your ways to kind of hack sleep for better sleep?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, I think most people just assume you tranquilize for sleep, but there are a couple things that could be playing into interrupted sleep. The first thing is cortisol rhythms. If you have insomnia and you're having trouble falling asleep, what that often is, if you've ever done like your 24-hour saliva test for cortisol, cortisol is supposed to be high in the morning. You wake up, you feel energized, you're ready to go for the day. And then throughout the day, it's supposed to be kind of steady state. And then in the evening, when it gets darker out, because it's a part of your brain called the pineal gland that's right between the eyes, so it can sense darkness. And when darkness occurs, that's when it starts to ramp down on the cortisol and ramp up on the melatonin. And these two are kind of complementary hormones, but they almost work as a teeter-totter. Like if cortisol is high, melatonin's low. If a lion is chasing you, you don't want to fall asleep. And similarly, when cortisol wanes, melatonin goes up. And so what I try to do with oils, I think oils can be used to kind of return organ systems and regions of the brain to balance, is stimulate the pineal gland to release melatonin naturally. So it's slightly different than supplementing with melatonin, which isn't a bad choice. It's just a more natural way. You're kind of going upstream. And we do that. This point kind of right above the ear is really, it's in line with, the pineal gland in the brain, and the skin is thinner. And so it's a really good point to apply oils. I actually think this is one of the reasons I wonder if perfume used to be oils, and the ears in general, they have a lot of reflex points, and the skin is thinner. So it's a great place to apply any oil that you like, because it will get more quickly into your system.
Oh, that is interesting. Okay, that's good to know. So what are your favorite oils? I know circadian rhythm, it's not, excuse me, the parasympathetic blends is good, but any other oils that you would recommend at night before bed?
I think anything that feels relaxing. A lot of people like the citrus blends are kind of uplifting. Like a lot of the orange blends, like neroli and bergamot, are perceived to be really relaxing. Those are slightly expensive. Orange is kind of like the poor man's alternative, but just as good. Kids really seem to like orange. It's really relaxing. There's some interesting research, like, everyone kind of talks about how right brain affects left body. And that's true everywhere except the nostrils. The right nostril goes directly to the right forehead, left nostril to left forehead. So if you start to play with like right brain, left brain, how that impacts things, the right brain is more associated with like anxiety and overwhelm. So if you or your children are maybe feeling anxious, maybe get nightmares at bedtime, one of the cool things you can do, and I learned this from my friend who's a functional neurologist, Titus Chu, you can smell something through the left nostril. So right nostril is overactive, you're anxious, you're overwhelmed, you're having nightmares. You plug the right nostril, smell anything. It could be orange. You could actually even peel a citrus fruit and smell that. It kind of turns on the left frontal lobe, balances the two hemispheres, and you feel less anxious, and this could be for any of us, for kids that are worried about homework assignments, for moms that are worried about whatever. It just helps kind of calm your brain before bed.
That is good. So if you struggle with panic attacks, let's say you're on an airplane, right, and you have trouble flying, you could use something like that. So you close the right nostril, and then you breathe in through the left, some sort of smell and oil, and then that activates the left part of the brain or the right part of the brain?
It activates the left, because left nostril goes directly to left frontal lobe, and frontal lobe is, your executive function. So this is also good if kids are having trouble focusing. If you're having trouble focusing, for me, it's, driving at night is tricky, and I like concerts. So there are times when and I like night skiing, so it's just kind of my hack to make sure I'm super focused and awake.
That's good. I like concerts too.
Yeah.
I want to transition to a very important topic in regards to those who do keto, right? One of the biggest hurdles I've seen with somebody who transitions from a standard American diet to more of a higher healthy fat diet, aka keto, is that they have trouble breaking down the fat. We know that the liver, this soccer mom organ liver, because she does everything, produces bile, and that bile it's not just important for detoxification, but it breaks down the fat, helps you assimilate the fat. It's like a detergent. And then the gallbladder stores the bile to drip it out whenever it's needed. And some people don't even have a gallbladder. A lot of people don't have a gallbladder. So people transition now to keto, and they can't break down fat. They get all these digestive issues. You mentioned it earlier, like fatty stools and fat in your stools, and they just feel awful. And they say keto didn't work for me. But in reality, it was a liver gallbladder issue. So you have a blend that I actually took earlier today because I was eating a fatty keto meal called Gallbladder. And I'd love for you to unpack a little bit about what I explained and how the thought process that went into this specific formulation.
Yeah. So it's funny. Most people don't even understand what the gallbladder does. That was a wonderful explanation. A lot of people think it's an optional organ, and so they get it removed. And that's okay. If you don't have your gallbladder, I'm going to give you some good advice also. So basically what can happen in the gallbladder, it stores and concentrates bile, and bile is supposed to flow kind of with the consistency of water. But if you have a lot of stress, if you're eating too many fats, too little fats, if, as you get older, maybe you've had a couple kids and they're, it also detoxifies, it carries out the waste, including excess hormones. But sometimes those hormones don't actually leave the body, they get re-assimilated. And so it gets more viscous and thicker, which means it doesn't flow as easily. And so it gets a little congested and backed up. And so the gallbladder blend that we created is really designed to, tonify the gallbladder and thin the bile. I believe that every organ, kind of has its own energetic signature that you can call a frequency, you can call it whatever you want. And I do believe that plants, everything in nature kind of has a similar frequency. And so you can combine, there's certain plants that are really known to support the gallbladder. Like black cumin seed is really amazing. And this is why certain foods are good for the gallbladder. Ginger, is good. And you can take those as plants. And what it does, it's a little bit, if you think of, teaching a kid to swim or teaching a kid to ride a bike, what you're doing, you might be putting flotation devices on their arms or training wheels on the bike. And the goal is really to get the child's body to feel what it feels like to successfully float in the water or move forward on the bike. You're moving, you're balancing, there's a lot going on. And for anyone who's ever taught a child to ride a bike, it's not like there's a 5-month process. For some kids, it takes 5 minutes, for some 5 days. It really is when it kind of clicks in and then they get it. And so what we're doing is we're topically overlaying kind of what the gallbladder, the energetic signature of what the gallbladder is supposed to feel like. And that is like a support mechanism for the gallbladder. And there are obviously supplements that you can take internally that are amazing too. But sometimes, when people say to me, oh gosh, I think I'd like to lose weight, I'm thinking maybe I'll change my diet or exercise. And I'm like, do both, why? It's just one more tool that you can kind of apply to return the gallbladder to balance. And another thing that's interesting, sometimes the gallbladder gets a little cranky, and the obvious symptoms are like gallstones, but some of the kind of lower level symptoms, like sometimes headaches kind of right between the shoulder blades, or sometimes you might feel slightly nauseous, or one of the reflex points associated with the gallbladder is between the shoulder blades, if you feel pain there, or a really easy indicator if you ever get motion sickness, like when you're in a car or a boat or an airplane. Those are just kind of low level, early warning signs that the gallbladder is struggling and could use a little support. And so anything you can do to kind of come to the aid of the gallbladder, and there are obviously supplements, binders, bitters, coffee enemas. There's a lot you can do, but it's just one more tool to kind of help the gallbladder, castor oil packs, return to balance.
Oh, that's great. Great explanation. So you could also massage the gallbladder essential oil into the gallbladder, right? Which is right underneath the right side of your rib cage, and a nice gentle massage. Which, if you're having some of those symptoms you mentioned, the headache, I think you said upper back pain, and motion sickness, you might want to try that, right?
And for people that, there are a lot of gallbladder meridian points that are related to headaches. Like I have a lot of clients who, when they get headaches, they just smell the gallbladder blend and it helps.
That's interesting. And then what about, and you said castor oil pack. I use a castor oil pack every night, but I don't put the gallbladder oil in the pack. Should I do that?
Yeah, it's great. It helps a lot.
Okay, I'll start doing that. And what if you don't have a gallbladder? Can you still use this the same way, or?
You can, and then you can also use the parasympathetic, because anything you do to support the parasympathetic nervous system, if you don't have a gallbladder, what's happening? The body is obviously still releasing bile, but this just kind of you basically want to strengthen the other organs of digestion. And so that's what
makes sense. You mentioned Kelly Kennedy earlier, who we both love and adore. She's the lymph queen, and I've had her on the show a couple of times.
And the fascia.
Let's talk about and fascia. I learned so much about fascia from her. So let's talk about the lymphatic system and the importance of this system, this pressure system, this gutter system, whatever you want to call it, and some some practical ways to get the lymph going, why that's important, and then maybe some essential oil blends you have for that.
Yeah, lymph. I honestly think the lymph is the most overlooked system in the body. And I think it's kind of critical to healing, because the lymph is really, if you think about how, what you want to do with the body is get the good things in. Like keto is a good thing that you're trying to get into the cells. The fat in the cells is really powerful, and make sure that the bad things leave, right? And the lymph is really critical to making sure that the garbage leaves the body. And so ideally, garbage waste, metabolic waste goes from the cell to the fascia, to the lymph, to the blood, to the liver, gallbladder, gut, toilet. At any point in kind of that domino chain, it can get congested and backed up. And a common point for it to get congested is the lymph, because unlike your heart, that, the blood moves through your body because your heart pumps it, your lymph moves when you move. Anything you can do to put your arms over your head. This is why movement, exercise, yoga, qigong, any kind of breathing practice, all of these things help the lymph move. And what happens, unfortunately, it's great if you're moving every day, but sometimes, the body is moving things out and it gets a little backed up. You might feel this, you might have like your junk drawer that sometimes just gets backed up. And so every once in a while, you really try to clean it out. So the more you can do, on a daily basis, like you brush your teeth every day so that that doesn't get backlogged. So there are a lot of like manual massages that you can use for lymph. One thing, if you think about applying oils on the surface of the skin, the lymph is pretty close to the surface and it's pretty gentle. And there are certain oils like spearmint, for example, that help to just, what you're trying to do is kind of get things moving. So if something's really congested and tight, you're just trying to open it up in a really gentle way. And you're also trying to support downward movement. So we have a lymph blend that you can apply, obviously there are lymph nodes all throughout your body, but they're really concentrated in certain points like the neck. And the neck is a big bottleneck because that is really the entry and exit point for the brain, right? And so anything that's going on in the brain, this is why sleep is important, because an aspect of your lymphatic system called your glymphatic system, which is kind of the brain car wash, is only active at night when you're sleeping. Your brain, when you're awake, you need full function and full capacity. When you're sleeping, it can kind of take a break and shrink a little bit and let kind of this car wash of fluids clean everything out. And then it's draining down the neck. And so if there's congestion in the neck, that could mean that things maybe sit too long in the brain, and then maybe the immune system reacts to these toxins with inflammation, and then you experience like fatigue or brain fog. So we have an oil that there's actually a Italian researcher, Marco Ruggiero, that was really interested in this. So he started taking sonograms, pictures of people's necks. And, the chronically ill often had really inflamed lymphatic systems. And then he started topically applying essential oil blends and realizing that the lymph started moving and everything started draining and functioning a lot better. And so we have an oil blend, and I combine it with fascia, because fascia is kind of what works in tandem with the lymph. It's the scaffolding. But if you think about, if something happens, we all kind of brace for impact and, and then whatever, the danger passes and we're kind of still braced. And so unpacking your lymph and your fascia is great. So sides of the neck, clavicle points, under the arms, and then along the bikini line.
That's good. And when we interviewed Kelly, she gave like a 5-minute breakdown of how to do it the right way. You just gave the great synopsis in a few seconds. And you're right, because a lot of people actually dry brush and do it backwards. They start at the bottom and go up. That's a big mistake. There's a lot of videos out there teaching people to dry brush that way. But to, your point, it starts at the neck, because she described it, Kelly did, as like the toll booth, right? You got to open up that toll and then you could start clearing things out, right?
Yeah. And Kelly, obviously, this is her core focus, but we have found, especially for those kind of bottleneck points, like the neck, the clavicles. In fact, if you even just feel, you can kind of tell if they feel a little tight or congested. And that's just, sometimes when I get anxious or when I'm, waiting in line, I just kind of gently massage the clavicle points and move things.
That's good. You also have a histamine balance blend, and I'd love for you to speak on that and how a lot of people have a histamine sensitivity or a histamine intolerance, but they have no idea. They don't even know what that term means, but they have all these symptoms, and it's because they're eating high histamine foods. Could you explain what that means, what's happening, and then why this blend could help with that?
Yeah. So histamine can be triggered by a lot of things, including mold. Mold, I think, is far more prevalent than we realize. It's, often molds, metals, and infections, toxicants. And so mold is sneaky and it's hard to detect. And it really lives like, in the sinus passageways and all these areas. And even if you had a mold exposure in your house and you remedy the house, the mold can linger. And that can kind of cause you to be overreactive to a lot of things. And it's very sensitive. And there's this one. So one of the things that I really love about plants is they're adaptogenic. And I explain it kind of in terms of Goldilocks, right? With Goldilocks, you don't want it too hot, you don't want it too cold, you want it just right. And so there are supplements that you can take if you're overreacting, they calm it down. Like antihistamines just shut it down, but you don't totally want it turned off. You want it just modulated. So like we were talking about cortisol earlier, there are times of day when it's too high, so you want to make it just right. Or times of day when it's too low, you want to make it just right. So sometimes working with plants that aren't like overcorrecting, but just returning to balance, it's a really nice approach to kind of modulate and help you return to normal. So the histamine blend is a bunch of plants that do that. My favorite is blue tansy, which is from Morocco and hard to get. It's only available at certain times of the year. It's outrageously expensive, but we tried to kind of make it more accessible by putting it in this histamine balance blend. And you can use it in a number of ways. You can use it actually to support sinus drainage and removal of mold. You can take it on a Q-tip and either gently circle kind of the bottom of the nostril on either side, both sides. And what you'll find is it's almost like it causes this drainage. Like all of a sudden you'll need to blow your nose or sneeze. The other thing you can do for long-term mold is, we talked about how the nasal passageways kind of go right up into the forehead where sometimes sinus congestion can live, is you can take a Q-tip, put it on both sides, and then actually leave it in your nose for like 20 minutes. And that just allows things to drain. People who have kind of chronic mast cell activation or Lyme or any kind of chronic illness really see a benefit in that. You can also just gently apply it. Like I'm allergic to cats, but I've noticed that when I have my boyfriend has cats, and so I often am around cats, but when I put the histamine balance on the back of my ears or the back of my neck, it works like a Benadryl without making me exhausted. So it just, or I travel with it because often when you're staying in hotels, it's moldy and it just alleviates any reaction.
Yeah, that's so many uses for that. And a lot of people do struggle with seasonal allergies, and this seems to be like a great solution for that, along with lowering your high histamine foods.
Yeah, yes. Obviously diet, is important.
Is there a reason why you say, on the bottle here for the histamine balance, it says that you could apply it on the bottom of your feet? What does it do when you put it in your bottom of your feet?
So the bottom of your feet are kind of like the secret magic point for everything for a number of reasons. Like some people are either sensitive to smell or someone in their household sensitive to smell. So the bottom of the feet, you can put oils on and then put a sock on and no one smells it. The bottom of your feet have very thick skin. So some of the oils that are perceived as hot, like cinnamon, thyme, oregano, meaning that if you were to maybe put it on your arm, it might feel a little red and warm. If you do that, oil and water don't mix. You're just going to go into your kitchen and grab any cooking oil and dilute that way. But the bottom of the feet are really safe because even if something is a hot oil that might cause a reaction elsewhere in the body, it won't on the bottom of the feet. And then the most magical spot is the bottom of the feet has all of these reflex points. So you can actually affect any area of the body using a certain point on the bottom of the feet. And we've got a full chart on our site that we can link to, but you can say that, you maybe have sensitive skin and are worried about putting an oil behind your ear. There's a vagus nerve point on the bottom of your feet, and you can just use the bottom of your feet as like a map to your whole body.
That is interesting. That is very, very cool. Your website has a lot of great, valuable resources, including that chart. You also have articles and videos. So go check that out if you want to nerd out about this. I mean, it's clear that Jodi knows all about oils and these meridians and Chinese medicine. I love that you studied it so much. Here's where a lot of people, they start hearing about the benefits of essential oils, but then they make a mistake. And I want you to really help them out with not making this mistake. And here's the mistake they make. These oils, I'll just go on Amazon and buy the equivalent and mix my own. Amazon has them for cheap. What's the problem with doing that?
Well, I mean, I like to stay away from fear-based marketing. I think some people want to tell you that some oils are better than others. And it's a little bit like food, right? Like certain foods you absolutely have to buy organic. All of our oils are organic. Some plants are pretty hard to kill. You don't need a ton of pesticides on mint. They grow anyway. And so I feel like if you're new to oils and you want to try them, great. It's hard to get orange wrong. It's hard to get peppermint wrong or lavender wrong. Those are good places to start. What I try to do differently is that I think there's a lot of encouragement of like, buy all the raw materials and mix your own. And sometimes that winds up being more expensive than just getting pre-made. Some of the oils that we use in our blends are super pricey, and you don't necessarily need the full bottle to use like 7 drops. So that's what I'd really try to do, is make done for you solutions so that people don't. I think there's a lot of, especially in the chronically ill community, a lot of concern that like, oh, I might do it wrong, or I might make a mistake, or I might hurt myself. And so what I'm trying to do is just give you ready-made remedies that a lot of practitioners are already using. So you don't need to worry about, did I mix it right? And then also really specific points that people have had success with, so that there's no guesswork of like, gosh, I don't really know how to apply it or when to use it. So I don't want anyone to think like I could really, I wouldn't say, I'd say don't drink it, as long as it's going to be hard to hurt yourself by smelling things. Topically applying, it's better if it's organic, because, they're concentrated essences of plants and you don't really want concentrated pesticides. But other than that, I would say if you're new to this, like, just try it. Buy orange and smell it through your left nostril.
There you go. Great advice right there. Yeah. Jodi, my favorite vitamin in the world is vitamin G. Gratitude. Vitamin gratitude. My shirt has a bottle of vitamin G. So my final question for you, Jodi, is what are you grateful for today? What daily dose of vitamin G do you have?
You know what? I am always grateful for my health. And I'm always grateful for the opportunity to have authentic connection with other people. So thank you for allowing me to connect with you and your community.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming on here and sharing your expertise and making a great product that I love, and giving our audience a coupon code. Jodi, where's the best place for the keto campers to check you out? Website, social media, all that good stuff.
They can come over to Vibrant Blue Oils, and we actually have a free gift if they want to go. It's a bonus chapter of my book that gets into more detail about the parasympathetic nervous system. boostthebrainbook.com/gift. And it will just, if I talked too fast or you want to go a little bit deeper, that's a great resource for activating your vagus nerve and your parasympathetic nervous system.
I love it. And we'll put your social media down below. Where's the best place for them to get your book? Is it your website or somewhere else?
Oh, anywhere the books are sold. You know how it goes. Amazon, Target.
And you had, who was it? Terry Walls wrote the foreword, right?
She's amazing. You know what I love about Terry is she's really into kind of food rotation and ensuring that you get access to different vegetables. And she allows you to count spices and essential oils in like the 110 different fruits and vegetables you want to interact with every year.
I love it. I just interviewed her, and her interview is coming out right before yours. So if you're listening to this, you could listen to that. But your book is called Essential Oils to Boost the Brain, Heal the Body, 5 Steps to Calm Anxiety, Sleep Better, Reduce Inflammation, and Regain Control over your health. That's just one of your books. And I love that title too. So Jodi, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I look forward to seeing you in person again. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.